fight. Therefore, let us not fight, because no one wants to go and sit in hell for an indefinite period of time. Let us not fight. Each and every verse you find how one emotion comes and prevents him from doing what he ought to do. So therefore the conclusion that he arrives at the end of all the Arjuna's talk is, he says, emotions take away from doing that which one ought to do. Now he is using another emotion. Throughout the chapter 1, it is emotions. When emotions by itself starts directing the actions, when emotions by itself start deciding what one should do, one ought not to do, invariably that person ends up doing the wrong things. Invariably ends up doing the wrong things. Now he is using another emotion. What is the emotion? We will be living in hell for indefinite period of time. Fear of punishment. Now he is indicating fear of punishment. It's like the man saying, don't steal, otherwise we'll get caught. We'll be in jail. Therefore, don't steal. That's all he's saying. All that he's saying is, don't steal, because you'll be caught and you'll be behind bars for a long period of time. Therefore, stop stealing. The fear of punishment. Various emotions you find Arjuna displaying. Attachment, desire, anger, revenge, fear. Now punishment. We should not, by this action, we will be made to go through the punishment. In the infant stages of evolution, in the infant stages of spiritual evolution, some discipline can be brought in only by an external force. So they talk about hell, they talk about you will be punished, this will happen, there are so many things they talk about because of this fundamental law, of this fundamental principle. The fundamental principle is human mind by itself is not disciplined, cannot be disciplined. By itself it will be running towards the lower. Senses by itself has a natural attraction to indulgence. Mind by itself has a natural affinity to indulge. Therefore, both together takes the human being down. Therefore, in the initial stages there has to be some external monitoring, some external policing is required. It's exactly like the sapling and the fence. Sapling, it has to be protected by the fence. But it gets very irritated by the sapling, gets very irritated by the fence, because it feels the fence is obstruction. Anything higher in nature, the mind sees it as an obstruction to enjoyment. This is the law. Anything higher in nature, mind will perceive it, see it as an obstruction to what? To its own enjoyment, to its own indulgence. When you say enjoyment as far as the mind is concerned is only through indulgence. So, mind's enjoyment means you should understand it as only through indulgence. Therefore, you cannot allow the mind, you cannot allow the individual to indulge. Therefore, what they did, they kept some external disciplines. As these external disciplines were kept, simultaneously knowledge was also given, so that through knowledge and understanding you will not become disciplined, you would have become wise. That wise way of living, others call it as a disciplined life. But as far as that man is concerned, he is living a free life. Again I repeat, the moment there is knowledge and understanding, he lives a different quality of life. That quality of life, others call it as they say, what a disciplined life. And you look at that and you feel like, even though it is good, but I don't like to be that kind of a disciplined life. But you ask that man who's living that life, he says, there is no discipline. I am free. I am free. That's all. Free from what? Free from the senses, free from the mind. Free from the senses, free from the mind. That's all. If you are free from the senses and the mind, you automatically become free from the world. You can't become free from the world directly. You can only get free from your senses and the mind. Once you are free from your own senses and the mind, world goes away automatically. Therefore they said hell, heaven, incentive to do some good actions, they said heaven, punishment. If you do bad actions, you will. It's like, most of the time, some kind of control is brought in human beings by saying what? You do mistake, your children will suffer. That's the only way, because of the attachment to children. At least that keeps you from some basic. You can't turn around and say, if I commit a mistake, why should they suffer? You cannot ask that question. Or if you have asked that question, I have understood what? You are separate, you are a separate individual. What you call as your children is a separate individual. But then it doesn't work that way. Therefore what they did, you make a mistake, your children will, at least for that, some discipline will be there. And if you violate it, they give. These are all the punishments. A graphic description of mental agitations is hell. One is to say you will be agitated. Another is to picturize the various ways of getting agitated. That's all. It's a graphic representation. Arjuna, in utter confusion. Confusion arises when emotions clash with each other. Confusion is nothing but clash of emotions. One aspect of you is pulling you in one direction, another aspect in you is pulling you in opposite direction. Sometimes 10 different directions you are pulled in at the same time. You don't know what direction to. This is what confusion is. Confusion is nothing but a state of conflicting emotions. Arises comes because of emotions. Arjuna is in utter confusion because what are all the emotions that is pulling him in various directions? First is attachment. He started by saying bandhus. These are all my family. First thing, started by saying attachment. Then the desire for his own desire for the kingdom. But then the desire will be, I will get the kingdom, but there will be a guilt associated with it. Because I have got the kingdom, killing my own. Because of the guilt that they are creating in him, he was so angry at. If anyone creates guilt in you, you will feel very angry at that person because he has slaved you. If someone can make you feel guilty, you will feel like, in relation to that person, you will feel extremely irritated, extremely angry. Why? Because he has slaved you. He has slaved you, make you feel miserable. I hate you also makes you miserable. Another man can create a guilt in you also. Between the two, what will make you more miserable? The guilt, anger, revenge. What is the all these conflicting emotions? Now the emotion is punishment, fear of punishment. Therefore, Krishna, you and me will be in hell. Yeah, we both, because he is also part of the war, no? So you and me will be in hell. Do you want to be in hell? Obviously Krishna will say, no, we don't want to be in hell. Therefore, let us go away. 45 putting. Alas, we are involved indeed to commit a great sin by preparing to slay our own kinsmen for the greed of pleasure of kingdom. Allow the man to talk, the real nature starts coming after. Just allow the man to talk, don't interfere. But then we cannot stop. Even before he concludes the first statement, we have to tell something. Yeah. And then you don't get a chance to meet the you don't get a chance at all to meet the real person. If you have to really meet someone, what you should do? Listen. The first few minutes excuse me all the knowledge they have, all the front they have, can stay only for 2-3 minutes, not beyond it. The front they can put, cannot stay more than 2-3 minutes. So what do? You allow them to speak. Not only you allow them to speak, don't interrupt, don't interfere. Go on agreeing to what all they say as right. Hold on. True nature starts. Unprovoked, Arjuna is exposing his another true nature. What is the true nature? Pleasure of kingdom. Greed for pleasure of kingdom. Unprovoked. No one said this fight is not for the kingdom. This fight is for what? It is the fight between virtue and vice. It's a fight between right and wrong. It's a fight between the higher and the lower. Not the fight for kingdom. Now what Arjuna is saying? For the greed of the kingdom, Krishna, see, we are ready to prepare. We are ready to commit the sinful act. What is the sinful act? Killing your own people. Tragedy is, for 13 years when Yudhishthira was saying we should not fight, just for the sake of kingdom, why fight? Arjuna kept on saying, what kind of a foolish man are you? We are being, we are cheated. Yeah. We are cheated. We have to fight for our rights. Even if we don't want the kingdom, we should still fight, because that bad people has to be. I don't want anything for myself, sir, but you know that bad people should not allowed to exist. For that only I am. Arjuna gave all the reasons, came into the battlefield and started saying the same thing. The only difference why Arjuna is slightly worse than the rest of the case is because at least the others didn't have a doubt coming into the battlefield. Duryodhana was very clear. He had no, actually speaking, Duryodhana should have asked this question. He had no doubts. He is ready to fight. Yudhishthira side also there is no, he is also ready to fight. Who got into the confusion? The man who thought he knew what he was doing. The situation came, he is confused. It's a great sin to fight and kill one's own kith and kin. One's own kith and kin. The Sanskrit word aho means, in Tamil it is Ayova. All for interpretation. Just ask one question, one man will give one interpretation. Very good class, sir, because everybody was allowed to interpret, contribute. Alas, he is concluding, alas, what a piteous state that we have reached, Krishna. What is the state? Our own kinsmen we are ready to kill, all for the sake of the greed. He is using words not meaning what he is saying. If he has actually understood greed, he would not have come. Or if a man who has understood, even God cannot persuade him to become greedy. A man who has understood the futility of becoming greed, God cannot persuade him to get greedy again. Are you able to follow? Krishna won't be able to persuade Arjuna to fight if he has actually understood. But what Arjuna thought was, he has an understanding. Understanding based on what? Understanding based on ignorance. Understanding that rose out of repetition. Understanding that rose out of no thinking. Wisdom is something different. Wisdom is that which arises out of thinking. Why we call it as wisdom is because it is unmoving. Wisdom is that which doesn't move. It doesn't shake. Your life can be at stake, but you will not be shaken. Then it is called wisdom. Opposite of that is, any small thing is enough to create a confusion. Maybe, how do I know whether what I am doing is right? It means you have no wisdom, and you can never tell that person also, because whatever you say, the other person will argue back. No, sir, but what you don't understand is, what you don't. Wise man will never speak. Ignorant man is not available for, and ignorant man is not available for knowledge. An ignorant man is not available for receiving knowledge. The wise man doesn't speak. Then what is happening? Arjuna is talking something parallelly, Krishna is talking something. Both look like they are having a conversation, but there is no conversation. Arjuna is saying something and that is going on in one direction. Krishna is saying something and that is going on in another direction. And looks like both are having a perfect conversation. If you want to understand this, observe when two people are having a conversation. Observe. First of all, you should not participate in that. You should not participate in that conversation. Train, if you get upper berth, don't go and sleep there. Yeah. Go and lie down there and watch the conversation. They get into a conversation. One man starts something and he is saying something. And the other man is only waiting for him to stop, finish. The moment he stops, he starts. Unconnected to. And when the tea and when the chai wala comes, both exchange teas also, because they have become very good friends now. Because of what? They had a beautiful conversation. Everyone talks to themselves. If you have to have a conversation, two things are important. If you have to have a conversation, two things are important. The first thing that is important is a thirst for knowing. Then only you can have a conversation. If there is no thirst for knowing, you will be more interested in giving what you know. You cannot have a conversation. The first thing is a thirst for knowing. Then you can have a conversation. The second important thing that is needed for a conversation is what? Listening. Two things. One is the thirst for knowing. Second is the capacity to listen. Word triggers the memory and the mind goes in one direction. Supposing in the course of 1 hour 15 minutes, so many words are said, unprovoked the mind itself goes. Sometimes with so much of difficulty you sit and try and listen also. In a sentence, one word will trigger one thought flow and it's gone in that direction. Therefore, what is lost? There is no listening. There is no listening. Gautam Buddha said, the first principle he said is right listening. He said it's right listening. Listening is the capacity to keep aside your thoughts. That is right listening. Second thing is the thirst for knowledge. A thirst for knowledge. Now there is a thirst for giving discourses. Opposite of that is the thirst to give discourse. Except this 1 hour 15 minutes, 22 hours 45 minutes, the discourses that I receive, you should be there to see it, the discourses. Another in the 1 hour 15 minutes revenge. Complete revenge in this 1 hour 15 minutes. so difficult is to listen. Much more difficult is to develop the thirst for knowledge. The thirst for knowledge arises when you are disgusted with ignorance. As long as you are happy with ignorance, thirst for knowledge will not come. Understand? Thirst for knowledge comes only when you are disgusted with your own ignorance. Thirst for wealth comes only when you are disgusted with poverty. If you are comfortable with poverty, there will not be any thirst for wealth. Not only there will not be any thirst for wealth, poverty you can glorify poverty and say that, anyway, what is the use, sir? See, whatever it is, we are going to have only 4 idlis, no. 1 bed to live, no. Not that he has turned philosophical or anything. He has started to glorify. You follow what I am saying? The thirst for wealth comes when you are disgusted with poverty. You are disgusted with poverty and you are ready to do anything to get out of it. Similarly, thirst for knowledge comes only when you are disgusted with. Thirst for knowledge is not for knowing more. Thirst for knowledge means we think we have to know. It's not knowing more. It arises from an irritation, a kind of disgust with being uncomfortable with ignorance. That's all. Then there will be the thirst for knowledge. As long as I am comfortable with ignorance, in me I will not have any thirst for knowledge. You follow what I am saying? Therefore, for knowledge, the thirst for knowledge comes through a discomfort with ignorance. That's all. A discomfort creates the thirst. How can you develop the discomfort? The discomfort again comes through knowledge only. That's where you are in the catch-22 situation. Again the discomfort comes through knowledge. Just as to get into waters, you should know swimming. To get into waters, you should know swimming. And swimming can be learnt only in waters. What comes first? First I will get PhD in swimming, sir. Then I will get into water. You understand? And swimming can't be learnt in waist, neck deep water. You can't learn swimming. Swimming can be learnt only when water is correct. Swimming can be learnt in that water where you can get drowned. Mind said, now what is the logic, sir? First I will learn swimming, then only I can get. Understand? This is the paradox of life itself. Swimming can be learnt only in. The thirst for knowledge again comes from knowledge only. What is the knowledge? So many things I have been getting what I want. It's not that of the 100 things that I want, it's not that nothing. Now the nothing I didn't get. Of the 100 things that I want, I got. See, at every level, everyone gets at least 85% of what they want. It gets satisfied. It gets fulfilled. What is the knowledge? That fulfillment of 80-85% has not made you experience 80-85% of fulfillment. The unfulfillment remains the same. Because that one thing that you don't have can upset all the other things that you have, all the blessings that you have, all the benedictions, all the good things that you have. The mind doesn't see. The mind refuses to see. the mind fails to see, all because of what? One thing that's the knowledge. And that one thing will always be there. So as long as that one thing is there, you will be always unfulfilled. Therefore, what am I trying? What am I trying to do with what I am doing? A different kind of inquiry sets in. You develop a thirst for knowledge. That conversation between the seeker and the teacher is Upanishad. Bhagavad Gita is not an Upanishad, because Arjuna is talking parallelly, Krishna is talking parallelly. Upanishad is a conversation, even though Gita is also a conversation. What is Upanishad? The conversation between a seeker who has this thirst for knowing, and here is a man who's knowing. You understand? Arjuna is not a seeker. Arjuna is like any one of us. A situation makes us a difficulty in life. The situation in life makes us to seek. It's not wrong to start like that, because most can start only like that. It's not wrong. But then the whole approach to knowledge, the whole understanding of knowledge becomes so utilitarian, because you start seeing it as so. Knowledge is something that will help my problem. And what is your problem? What is your problem? Problem is nothing but something that is stopping you from indulgence. Something that is interfering between you and your indulgence. That's why the wise one never gives advice, never gives counseling, because when anyone is coming and asking for advice, when anyone is coming to you for counseling, don't give advice, don't give counseling, because what are they actually asking? Remove my obstacle so that I'll continue my indulgence, that's all. Because you solve that problem, that man doesn't. You solve that problem. He doesn't go back to, he doesn't say, oh thank you, this knowledge is so valuable, worthwhile, let me start aspiring for moksha, liberation. He doesn't say that. He says what? Very good knowledge, sir. I will recommend 4 more people to come to you. Yeah. And what is that for recommendation for? Same. Yeah. All human problems, 2 things. All human problems has only 2 fundamental roots. One is a material problem. Both ends not meeting. That's all. It doesn't matter. It can be at the level of the maid, it can be at my level, it can be at the level of the king and queen. But all has one problem in common. What? Both ends don't meet. Material problem. Material problem. For a man who's having material problem, you give a knowledge, that man says, okay, knowledge it's okay, first increase my wealth. If that man has wealth, he indulges, gets into pampering and gets into emotional problem. So you solve that emotional problem, go back and earn more and get into more. Therefore, please understand this. That's why you give advice, something happens to you. Carefully follow. You give advice, something happens to you, the law of karma. Because you are also partly, since you are guiding that person into it, one part of the karma comes to you. Not understanding this, people give free advice to everyone. If you understand this, you will say, I don't know, I know how to protect. You will be willing to serve. You will be willing to sacrifice. Please understand the difference. There will be a willingness. There will be a willingness to serve. There will be a willingness to sacrifice. But then you will not guide, because you are driving that man into that action. No. So that's where he says, I don't do counseling at all. We don't do this counseling. We don't do this at all. Because of what? Because when they come and ask you for a help, you think they are asking you for help. Actually, what are they asking for? I am putting it in a very, very plain, blunt. Man says, I am disturbed, sir. What is he disturbed about? He wants to continue living a life of enjoyment. Some disturbance is there. Now he comes and asks you, what? Remove my, I am too disturbed, sir. Remove it. You also get carried away by it, and you also start giving. At least Vedanta class, how you should come, no? You tell one person to come for the Vedanta class, next Sunday whether you are coming or not, you will be thinking whether that man is, even if you come here, you will be searching whether that man is here or. You get so carried away in what? In what? Removing the obstacles of other person. You remove the obstacle of the other. What the other does? Goes back and continue the indulgence, create another problem. You can go on solving problems, but nothing happens. This doesn't create thirst for knowledge. Even though it looks like they are also thirsty for knowledge, they are not actually thirsty for knowledge. The thirst for knowledge comes only when you are uncomfortable with ignorance. Most of the time it happens where a situation drives you for knowledge, to seek knowledge. But then don't restrict the knowledge to that alone. When I say to that alone means what? Coming to knowledge when you have problems. It's exactly like saying, we are all happy today. Let's go on a vacation to Switzerland. Supposing if the family says, we are all so happy today, let's go to temple, na? There is something wrong in that family, no? You understand? A person who is not having thirst for knowledge cannot participate in a conversation. A person who can participate in a conversation is one who has the thirst for knowledge. And what does thirst for knowledge means? A discomfort with ignorance. How do you understand the discomfort? From another angle, look at it. The problem of today, carefully follow. The problem of today didn't come from yesterday's confusion. The problem of today came from yesterday's clarity. You thought you knew exactly what you are. Therefore, all problems arises through the so-called clarity. You understand this, you will have thirst for knowledge. Are you able to follow what I am saying? The problem of today didn't come from yesterday's confusion. If you were confused yesterday, straight away you would have gone for guidance. Straight away you would have taken advice, taken help. But you knew you don't need any. You thought you don't need any advice. You thought you knew exactly what you are doing. And when others tells you at that point of time, you tell them what? Huh? Get lost, huh? Narayana. Diplomatic class is becoming a very 2-3 weeks on a foul language la varum bol rakha. Understand? Is it? Correct. I don't need your advice. You keep because I know what I am doing. The same man comes 6 months later, 6 years later, crying, saying what? I got into a problem. Even then he cannot recollect. Even then he cannot connect. Last. What you bring as solution to a problem itself turns into another problem. You have a problem, you bring something as a solution to it, and that very solution itself turns into another problem. So in effect, what are you doing? Replacing one problem with another problem. Hunger and starvation was the problem. Lack of food was the problem. And then they discovered fertilizers. They thought, wow, hunger is conquered. There will not be hunger anymore. Now what has happened? The very fertilizer had become the problem. I'm not saying don't discover or anything. What human being doesn't understand is try to solve it based on an emotional approach to it, an indulgent approach to it. All problems are attempted to solve either through an emotional approach or quickly get rid of it so that I can get back to my indulgence. Vedanta says, go to the root. Go to the root of it. When you go to the root of it, you will not like to hear that, because when you go to the root of it, it says problem is you. Problem is you. Oh no sir, it's not. இது வரைக்கும் கரெக்டா சொல்லிட்டு இருந்தேன், suddenly why did you started the old story? You are the problem. At least say partly world is also responsible. No, at least partly say. Why do you have to say only? You go to the root. It says the problem is you. Inside of you in what? In two ways. What are the two ways? The senses and the mind. The problem is sitting with you in two ways. What are the two ways? One in the form of the senses, another in the form of the mind. Emotions. Literally no conversation. Arjuna is talking one way, Krishna is talking one way, Krishna is staying quiet. And every time I come by thinking, Arjuna innoda mudichirunumpa, because Arjuna is creating so boring to stay with Arjuna for so long. But then he is very interesting also. Yeah, more than Krishna, Arjuna is very, very interesting, because in one Arjuna you can see the shades of the entire humanity, the shades of every human being you can see in Arjuna. 46.
यदि भामप्रतीकारम् अशस्त्रं शस्त्रपाणयः धार्तराष्ट्रारणे हन्युः लङ्केशे मतरं भवेत् यदि भामप्रतीकारम् अशस्त्रं शस्त्रपाणयः धार्तराष्ट्रारणे हन्युः लङ्केशे मतरं भवेत्.
If the sons of Dhritarashtra, armed with weapons, should slay me, unarmed and unresisting in battle, that would be better for me. From fear of punishment to greed to sacrifice now. Desperate bid. Because how long he can talk? Because that man is not responding at all. He is simply looking at him straight. How long he can now? He is saying, because that man is unmoving. Then he thought, okay, some sacrificial statement if I make, maybe that man will react. What is that? In the desperate bid, final attempt he is making. Last desperate attempt to justify his stance. What? I will sacrifice myself. Even then he is not saying I will fight and die. Even then he is saying unarmed, unresisting I will die. Are you able to follow? Even here he wants to do what? Even now he is not saying let me die, but let me die fighting. What he is saying? Let me die unarmed, unresisting. And he thinks it has a very big sacrificial statement. He thinks he is doing a very virtuous, noble, what is it? A typical example of false vairagya. Throughout the chapter 1, Arjuna picturizes false vairagya. 50 verses to explain what false vairagya is. 650 verses to explain what true vairagya is. 650 verses he takes to explain what is true vairagya. 50 verses he says what is false vairagya. And false vairagya is always appealing then than the true vairagya, because the true vairagya demands, number one, action. Number two, it demands obligatory actions. Number three, it demands obligatory actions completely unconnected to your likes and dislikes. This is true vairagya. That's all. First thing is doing. First thing, doing that which you ought to do. First thing, action. Arjuna is saying, get away from action. So, exactly the opposite, true vairagya. First thing is action. Second is that which ought to be done. The third thing is unconnected to your likes and dislikes. Doing an action driven by likes and dislikes is easy. Performing an action based on likes and dislikes is not difficult. That's what everyone is doing anyway. Actions driven by likes and dislikes. Completely different from that is doing that which you ought to do. That which ought to be done, not based on likes and dislikes. Arjuna is saying false vairagya. What is false vairagya? Let us run away from battle. Krishna, if you tell me to fight, I will stay in the battlefield unarmed, unresisting. Even here I will not do. Supposing if Arjuna had said, I am ready to die fighting, we won't be having Bhagavad Gita at all. We won't be having Bhagavad Gita at all. But thank God Arjuna didn't say that. Sunday morning would have been free also. You don't have to come and sit and listen to discourse. False vairagya. What is the false vairagya? Unarmed, unresisting, if I die, this is better for me than killing them. Right from the beginning, this is the last of Arjuna. After this, enough. Arjuna is over. 31. Arjuna started from verse 30, 31, he started his discourses, giving him various reasons on saying how to get away from doing that which ought to be. At every stage, every human being has enough justifications to move away from what he ought to do. At every stage. You ask the child have enough reasons to avoid doing what it ought to do. It has enough. And every reasoning is so complete, you will not know how to counter it. You feel like saying, oh, maybe they are right. But then they are not moving away from doing that which ought to be at every level. That which ought to be done is always towards something higher. That which ought to be done is always towards something higher. Something higher means it involves sacrifice. Higher implies sacrifice. Higher implies a sacrifice. Mind is that mechanism which will want the benefits of higher without leaving the lower. It will want the benefits of the higher. It will want to live that high state of life, and it will not want to leave the lower. It will not want to leave the lower. And it has enough justifications to convince itself that how correct it is not to leave the lower. First he said from a personal angle, and then he started family, bandhus, relatives, how can we kill our own people. Then he gave a flavor of morality to it. Then he brought in a social angle to it. Varna Sankara will happen. First, see what all he did to avoid obligatory action. First he brought in a personal angle. It's uncomfortable to me, I will not do. No reaction from Krishna. Then he went on to personal angle. From personal angle he went on to the angle of bandhus, relatives. That also there was no reaction. Now he has moved on to, and then he moved to what? A social angle. He brought the society into it. How he brought in the society? Intermixture of caste. Women will be, oh my God, women will get trouble. First thing is, let us attend to that. Obligation, we'll see. later. He brought that angle. Again there was no. Then he said, maybe you like the kingdom Krishna. That's why you are asking me. Even further there is no. Even further there is no reaction. Then he went on to say, we will be in hell. You and me will be in hell for an indefinite period of time. That also didn't work. Now he has come to the desperation. What is the desperation? Now he has come to that extreme step. What is that extreme step? Better to die. Yeah, better to die than to do that which I ought to do. It's not sacrifice. All that he is saying is, what is he attempting? What is he actually saying? What is he actually saying? I will commit suicide. I'll commit suicide. Krishna looking at him saying, continue. Yeah, continue. Because he's not saying anything. Even if the man saying I'm committing suicide, now that man is not saying anything, now what to do? He's exhausted. No energy to commit suicide also. That is the state of how he has got no energy to commit, because that also requires some energy. Some madness is required for that also. Sacrifice is never created by the outward situation and environment. Sacrifice arises from one's own inner personality. Very difficult is to understand this distinction. Our sacrificial nature is always triggered by an external environment, external situation. That's where the man on the roadside has to bandage, appear bleeding, dirty, because sacrifice is always driven by an external situation. Not true sacrifice, he says. True sacrifice arises from the strength of one's own inner personality, not dependent upon circumstance or environment or situation. You're going to follow the difference between the two. In Arjuna's case, what has happened? The pressure of fighting has made him to say, let me sacrifice. It's the pressure of fighting that is making him to say, let me sacrifice. Actually speaking, he is not ready for sacrifice. If he is truly prepared for sacrifice, Krishna would have said, waste of time here, let us both go and discuss something higher. Don't waste time with all this, setting right the situation and all, don't waste time, because again and again it's the same thing that's going to happen. Krishna would have never, he would have spoken a completely different language. Yeah. Being an enlightened master. Purna Avatar. He has to speak what? Let us fight, let us do this. When actually he should be talking the language of the Upanishadic master. That side of Krishna you will find only in Uddhava Gita. That side of Krishna you will find it in, there are two Gitas. One is the Bhagavad Gita between Krishna and Arjuna. There is another text called Uddhava Gita. Again by, you read that, first 10 verses you will fall off to sleep. First 10 verses will fall off too. So you head or tail you will not understand. Takes off in such a, he takes off in such a different angle, takes off in such a different height. If Arjuna is truly a renunciate, what he would have done? He would have sat at the feet of Krishna and said what? First let us discuss Brahma Vidya. Then we will come back to all this. First let us discuss. That shows Arjuna is ready for sacrifices. Now Arjuna is not ready for sacrifices. It's like the parent saying, I have made sacrifices for my children. Any meaning in that? If the parent says, you know how much sacrifices I have made for my children, all others will say very good. The child will turn around and say, it's your problem. Yeah, it is you have to do it. That's all. You understand? It's not sacrifice because there is an element of selfishness, attachment. There is an element of what? Utilitarian. There is an element of mindness in it. My comes first. I come first, then the family comes. That's why I say my family. So the mindness comes first. The moment the mindness comes in, it ceases to be sacrifice. Ceases to be sacrifice. True sacrifice comes from, he says, within one's inner personality, arises from the strength of one's own personality. And the strength comes from, take it or leave it, strength and courage to a human being comes through knowledge and understanding, full stop. You have everything, you will still feel insecure. You can have everything in the world and you will feel extremely insecure. You might not have anything and you have knowledge, you feel supremely insecure. That's all. ரெண்டுத்தையும் கம்பைன் பண்ணினா நல்லா இருக்கும்ல. Between the two only one can exist. Both cannot coexist. You understand? True courage, true conviction arises through knowledge and understanding, not from anything outside. Not from anything outside. Arjuna has reconfirmed his stance of self-sacrifice. By this statement, what he has done, he has reconfirmed his stance. What is the stance? I am willing to sacrifice. I am ready to die, sir, but I will not cause trouble to others, sir. And you also pity and say, what a supreme sacrifice. Krishna will laugh at you and say, this is a typical example of false vairagya. Having reached this point, Arjuna said, I am ready to die. After that, what else the man can say? He has said everything, nothing moved Krishna. Now what else the man can say? Sanjaya starts now. Because Arjuna has exhausted everything and he stayed quiet. Now you get the description of Arjuna from Sanjaya. It is Sanjaya that is going to describe how was this man looking like now. After making the supreme sacrifice, after taking the stance of readiness to make supreme sacrifice, how does he look? He is not dancing in joy. He is not blissful. He is not cheerful. He is not happy. How does he look like? Very good.
Sanjaya Uvacha Eva Mukharjuna Sanke Ratopastarupa Vishat Visvirja Dasharam Chapam Shoka Samvigna Manasaka Sanjaya Uvacha Eva Mukharjuna Sanke Ratopastarupavishat Visvirja Dasharam Chapam Shokasamvigna Manasaka.
Sanjaya said, having spoken thus in the battlefield, Arjuna sat down in the seat of the chariot, casting away his bow and arrow with mind distressed with sorrow. First thing, he sat means what? Incapacitated to move. Incapacitated to move. He sat down. Abba. Sit, no? Because you can't take one more step. So, sitting implies an incapacity to move. He is incapacitated. A man of Vairagya, the man who was so worried about the society, the man who was so worried about welfare of women, a man who is so worried about how to set right everything in order, man who is ready to make the supreme sacrifice of his own life, that man, how he should be appearing? Should be cheerful, he should be happy, he should be dancing, he should be singing. Instead, how is he looking? Sitting depressed, not unable to move and do that which he, because the mind has strangled him by saying, I will not move, stubborn, has done. All this had made him to turn. He sat down, casting away his bow and arrow. Casting away his bow and arrow is an indication of his lifetime training hasn't helped him. Casting away his bow and arrow means his lifetime training. All the adjectives of Dhananjaya, Savya Sachin, all that has failed him. That's why he has cast his bow and arrow. One of the beautiful name of Arjuna is Savya Sachin, meaning he is dexterous, he is skillful in bow and arrow, both hands. You know that? Imagine there is a player who can play with the right hand. There is another player who plays with left hand. Both are independently perfect. Now imagine one man who is perfect in both. Now what is his level of achievement in that art? What is his dexterity? What is his skill? What is the amount of training that he has done? That's why Gita is so interesting, because of Arjuna. That man dropped his bow and arrow. Mind distressed with shoka, sorrow. What is sorrow? Sorrow arises when you have done all attempts to get what you want. Nothing worked. You will not know what to do, sitting in one corner looking at the ceiling. This is sorrow. Shoka. What is shoka? A state of mind where all attempts failed. All the attempts that the man made to get what he wants failed. Now he doesn't know what else to do. Sitting in one corner of the room looking at the feeling, because the mind has turned so stubborn, unyielding, killing itself. Mind is the mechanism, causes self-destruction. Mind doesn't cause destruction to another. Mind is that mechanism which causes its own destruction. Self-destruction mechanism is this mind. Self-whipping mechanism, self-destruction mechanism. When the self-destruction mechanism has reached its peak, that peak is called shoka, sorrow. A frustrated state of existence where no way to get what you want. Why you are not getting what you want? Why you are not getting what you want? Because there is no dharma in what you are seeking. There is no dharma in what you are wanting. It's all dharma. It's all indulgence. It's all indulgence. It's all adharma. That's why you are not getting what you want. If you are not getting what you want, means there is an element of, what is in it? There is an element. It's not lack of effort. You can put in all the effort, still you will not get what you want. And the man says, put in more effort, put in more effort. He goes on putting more and more effort. Commensurately, the proportionately the sorrow also goes on increasing. A time comes where completely destroyed. Shoka. This is the state of shoka. Tragedy is the man in this state of shoka, someone else has to come and bundle him up. That's what Krishna is going to do. Ithoda we have finished with Arjuna. So we will say goodbye to Arjuna. Say goodbye to Arjuna, no, don't worry. Krishna would have said just one word, again Arjuna. You will see it in the first 10 verses of chapter 2. Sanjay Arnala has reported, Krishna said, okay, why are you doing this, Arjuna? Again? Because he is just waiting for? He is just waiting for what? That's where you should never get into a conversation. The moment you get into a conversation, the other is waiting to. If you are not saying anything, the man doesn't know what else to say, he stays quiet. You also start saying something that is triggering him to repeat his story again. It's deeply psychological. Do you follow what I am saying? A man is talking, you simply stay quiet. He gets exhausted and he will also stay quiet. You say something, you saying something triggers what? Triggers what? Triggers the repetition. What is the repetition? Again he will start from scratch. All experience good. Correctly. Again they will start from scratch. You will feel like, oh my God, why did I even? Arjuna casts away his bow and arrow, mind distressed with sorrow. We will continue next week.
Thank you, Shankarji. Oh, yeah. You made them do what? Yes, for that. Thank you, sir.